You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Just a heads up, this episode is brought to you by the Script Summit Screenplay Contest, where you can win a cash prize or even a contract with a Hollywood talent manager. All you have to do is visit scriptsummit.com for more info. All right, welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast. On this episode, I am joined by a guest host as we analyze and break down a film to discover what works and what doesn't. Real quick before we get started, I wanted to mention that we are celebrating our 1-year anniversary of the Successful Screenwriter Podcast with a huge giveaway. This is awesome. We have a ton of prizes for you, from mentorships to swag, and you can enter it absolutely for free. All you have to do is visit the Successful Screenwriter Facebook page and click on the giveaway tab, or go to thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com/podcast. Now, you can enter multiple times too, but keep an ear out this episode for the secret code, which you can get 5 free entries with. Now, on to our show. All right, welcome to the podcast. I am Geoffrey D, Calhoun, your host, and I'm joined with story analyst from WeFixYourScript.com, Kristy Leigh Lussier. Thanks for being with us.
I'm excited to be here.
All right, so this week we are analyzing The Invisible Man, the one that came out in 2020 that starred Elizabeth Moss.
Yes.
I actually really enjoyed this one.
I love this movie.
All right, so I'm going to hit you with the log line. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Do it.
When Cecilia's abusive ex takes his own life and leaves her his fortune, she suspects his death was a hoax. As a series of coincidences turned lethal, Cecilia works to prove that she is being hunted by somebody no one can see. I really enjoyed this version of The Invisible Man. We've had a couple of attempts at this type of a movie. We had the Kevin Bacon one where he was like, a pretty evil dude, right? Because he could do anything. So he was corrupted.
Yeah.
I like this one because it's from a survivalist's perspective.
For sure. Yeah. And I like that they didn't, you could have easily gone again in a direction of like evil superhero-y kind of, or, let's do like a spy kind of action, whatever, you know, like they kind of more like the original, I think, or the movie way back.
Right.
Then.
Yeah, this was more thriller, less horror, whereas a lot of the older iterations were more kind of horror based. This was cool, and they didn't have to go crazy with the invisible technology.
Yes,
And what I really like with starting with the opening scene, we don't get a good look at the villain, at the antagonist. We don't really see his face. He's always dark lit. He's very faceless, even as she escapes. And I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, that whole opening sequence is directed so well. And you like the fact that it builds up that much tension and that much anxiety in such a short amount of time with absolutely no lines of dialogue other than her petting the dog. It's just great. It's just directed so well. And it's really kind of setting the stage for how we're moving forward in her perspective of, we can't really see this thing. So what exactly is the villain? Where's the bad guy?
Yeah.
What are we supposed to see that she sees that we can't, kind of thing?
I love the fact that we start with her escaping, I mean, that because I feel like that's a movie that we haven't really had an opportunity to see yet. So we start with her escaping, and she's meticulously planned this out, which shows that she's an active character, which you absolutely want to do. And we learn that. So immediately we find out she's an active character, and we're behind her. We know she's escaping. We don't know why, right? We can only assume. There's some visual metaphors there with the crashing waves outside, and then she's all alone, and she's kind of stuck in this castle is the feeling that you're getting, right?
Right.
But so she's saving herself, which is fantastic. But what I really like is just the icing on the cake, is just to make sure that this character is sold to the audience. She sees the dog, right? And she could leave the dog. She's going to leave the dog, but she can't leave that shock collar on the dog.
Yes. Yeah.
She's got to take that shot. And once you do it, you sold this. Everybody's, oh my God, it's a dog. And she take the shock collar off. Everybody's going to love this character now.
Yeah. Cause you've built up to this. All right. She's almost there. She's almost there.
Yeah.
And she does this almost self-sacrifice moment.
Exactly.
Where, she could get caught doing it, but she looks at the dog as herself, essentially.
Oh, absolutely.
She's been in the shock collar the whole time. She can't now turn around and leave somebody else in it.
Exactly. A beautiful visual metaphor of being muzzled in a relationship and showing that on the dog, and then her love for the dog's great. And the dog is utilized well throughout the story, actually, as hints that there are more than one invisible man, which I thought was great. I watched it twice. So on the second rewatch, you go, oh yeah, that's why the dog's barking, because it's not the owner. Oh, that makes sense. Right. So so really good stuff there. Her running away through the forest and then on the road waiting for the car to show up. And then she finally sees the car. She runs towards the car, which again, you're thinking, okay, this is an active character. This is great. Yeah. I just love it. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And again, it's active, but it's taking the audience on that same active journey. Yeah. Right. With the emotional, to me, I still think about it. I rewatched it again last night. I've seen it twice before. Yeah. I love the movie. And so still every time you're on edge. It's like, it's taking you through that. Yeah, absolutely. And he's still faceless when he runs up to the car and punches the window. We don't see the face. And a scene like that, I would expect he's tapping on the window. He gets down to eye level and he would be begging her to come out and doing some mental manipulation. We don't see his face. He punches the window. Right. And then they take off. And I was like, that's so awesome to keep that villain faceless like that, because he's supposed to be invisible. So we're never thinking about that guy. We're thinking about this entity. Yes. And they set up a lot of the camera work inside the home. So when you see almost like the Invisible Man vision, where they would show he's creeping on her by the fact that she's down a hallway. Yep. Right. And then the suspicion is that he's right where the hallway is. So we're actually looking through his eyes. They set that up in the house. Yeah. I thought that was awesome. Just a great way to educate the viewer of this is what you're going to be seeing. This is who's going to be watching her. Right. And a sense of space, and then becoming afraid of your space. So again, this is supposed to be a safe space for her, but throughout the whole time that a lot of those sequences happen in the house, it's just great, that camera work. You're right. Where the camera just even will pan over. Yep. And then pan back. And then hold like till it's just, you can't take it. Yeah. And then pan back. And it's just perfection. It's perfection to build up tension. It is. And it's almost like that's a person who's like looking over their shoulder and looking back. I love that. Yeah. And they played around with sound. So there's a scene where she's staying at her friend's house and she has to go out to the mailbox, and her friend, who's this cop, is incredibly supportive. What a wonderful supporting character. It's nice to see, like, he is the one that's really grounded and actually believes who she is, believes what she's saying, and doesn't doubt anything, because that's what this entire movie is about, is about abuse, right? And about how a woman isn't taken seriously. Right. Yeah. I mean, even, obviously he's a cop, and so he's got a criminology background, or, whatever, but he's also coming from that perspective, where he knows, and he can read probably people, he can read victims, he can read, anybody that he really talks to, and he can get a sense of, this person's not making this up. Yeah. Right. She's legit. Yeah. She's legit. And he's got a, personal connection with her. So I just think it's a great way to talk about spousal abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, in the space of a thriller, really, because it's everywhere. And a lot of, I don't want to just say women, a lot of people, because there's abuse on both sides of the aisle, but a lot of people can't talk about it, aren't taken seriously. Right. And so to kind of see how she is isolated from her friends.
Sure.
how she is, how she has her family turned against her. I mean,
Right.
these are all tools of manipulation
Right.
done by some controlling sociopath with deep insecurities.
Yeah. And then now, even though she has heard that he's passed away or he dies, she still doesn't believe it. But is it
right?
She doesn't believe it because we kind of know he's still there, or that abuse was so damaging,
absolutely,
that your mental state will never let go of that person regardless. Right?
I mean, you're traumatized. It stays with you. You have flashbacks. We didn't see anything like that in this, but you can see how on edge she is and how she's living. When you're traumatized like that, you live in a permanent state of survival. Right.
For sure.
You don't, it's never about tomorrow. You're never making plans. It's always
Right.
about today in this moment and how I get through it. And she is very much in that, especially when the director wisely would stay on her at the end of a scene and let Elizabeth Moss really emote subtly into that scene. Is absolutely perfection.
Yeah. So it's super great for sure. And behavior wise. So there's behaviors that, again, when you're in that abusive relationship, they don't adjust or change, even if you're out.
Right.
So little tiny things that you wouldn't think, but you're so on edge about them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. There was some in the movie and I can't remember them right now, but.
Oh, well, it shows up. That shows up in the end of the movie when we start to see him subtly manipulate her when he puts his hand on her thigh. That's when we get a brief hint of the monster within him.
Sure.
What I really enjoy, I mean, because there's a lot of great tricks that they used in this. I don't want to say from the Blumhouse toolbox, but they are there. So one of them is sound. So they would, when they would really want you to focus on her, they would cut out the sound, and then you would hear little clicks, little clacks, and they're so easy to miss.
Yes.
But the clicks and the clacks are the cameras in the suit telling you that they're there. And then they would add this guttural sound, which was, I just think, for effect. But it was so good.
Yeah, it was so great. And I actually credit that to the director. So the director, Leigh Whannell, comes from that new wave of these horror masters. Like his best friend's James Wan.
Okay.
They've done a ton of movies together. I mean, Leigh Whannell did Saw with James Wan.
Okay.
So he has a sense of really being able to build terror using not only how you're staging and lighting, but sound and how it affects your auditory capability, that it triggers, fear and tension in you. So I really do credit him. I mean, obviously all the filmmakers, but that's a tried and true technique he's used in films.
I think it's really good. And I think every time she starts to make a little bit of progress, she somehow gets isolated all the way up into where she's sitting, she's laying on the floor and she's crying. Right. And this is the midpoint of the scene. She's laying on the floor and she's crying. And then the young girl comes in. She says, "Hey, let's go have cake." And then bam, hit across the side of the head. And we think it's her doing it. And then that drives the family apart, drives the wedge apart. That's where we get to the midpoint because she's completely alone because she's lost her support structure.
Right. Any sense of that is now gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That's the point. He does that. Like his character is to tear everything down, because it's about owning her. Exactly.
Right. Because she doesn't need him, which I think is fascinating. And,
sure.
and there's a part of that dynamic there. So she tries to do some tricks that you would find in a movie, putting junk on the floor and the Invisible Man doesn't fall for it. And so then, he's mentally manipulating her and she ends upstairs and he's playing around with her. And then the paint can got me by surprise. I didn't expect that. It was great. I thought that was awesome. And then the invisible fight scene was absolutely amazing.
And so
then,
many good things.
Yeah. I mean, it was I just think so thematically it was great. Really talking about real world effects through a dramatic thriller. Is awesome. And then the concept was solid. This did, for some reason, to me, it felt like an origin story for her character. Like, is she gonna go be this invisible woman now?
Oh, I didn't even think of that, Geoffrey.
Right? Did you not feel that at the end where you're like, are they setting up something here?
Okay, so I will say, I do know that they've wanted to do that. They wanted to do the Universal Monster Universe for a long time. And of course,
right, the
they've
dark
had,
universe.
yeah, like they've had other opportunities. And this one, they felt like if we do Invisible Man, maybe it launches into something else. But it felt so standalone. It felt like it was just its own story. But now you saying that makes me go,
Yeah, I mean, it really did. It really ended with that, a little bit of a I mean, it ended with a resolution, but then it ended with, okay, where are we going? You know, because she doesn't get rid of the suit. She doesn't turn it in. She doesn't destroy it.
Yeah, it's in her bag.
And she's a killer.
I know. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, but now I'm like,
she became, you know, you become the monster that you hate, right? So she killed this guy. So there's a little bit of a moral story there, and just deadpan, like no regret, nothing. So that whole end sequence is fantastic. I loved it. I love the end sequence.
So good.
So these guys that are like these monsters, you know, they have deep insecurities, and so when we finally get a face to him, he's nervous. Right.
Sure.
He's over prepped food. He's got a shaky hand. I thought all of that was great, because if you had like a Stone Cold Killer sitting there, you know, if you had Hannibal Lecter sitting there, it wouldn't have sold. It wouldn't have made sense. Right. But you have this weaselly guy. And then you start to see it, and she's trying to, you know, get him to confess, and we find out he has the mic she has the mic on, and he knows she has the mic on because he knows her. So he's not falling for it. He just wants her. And then she puts the suit on, and he cuts his own throat. I was like, oh my God, that's an amazing ending. Yeah.
It was so good. So good. But again, it was this really cool play on what we can and cannot see. And so obviously they're using the security camera footage kind of as that tool to really give cut perspective. Right?
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Oh no. Yeah. So that's what
she's a strong character. She's a strong character. She's intelligent. And it's having a strong central character like that, you have to create an opposition against that as just powerful, or if you even more. So when you have somebody like her who already knows the security system, she knows all the dead spots, you have to have him so arrogant and cocky in this moment of what he feels is victory that he lets his guard down for a moment.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then she can come in and then she takes care of business, and then comes off camera and it spoils the surprise.
And you know what's cool and fascinating? I found out that's one of the first scenes that they shot in the whole film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they shot the ending first because they apparently they only had the actor who was he was in Haunting of Hill House, I think.
Adrian, the villain, the antagonist.
The villain, yeah. Okay. So he had an interesting schedule. So they only they shot like the beginning first. Yeah. And then the sequence with him busting through the window was like towards the end of their filming.
Oh, wow.
Which was really interesting, I thought.
It's got to be hard as an actor to be able to get yourself into the headspace.
Right. Because it's like, yeah. But, you know, I mean, it was great.
So I think they did a lot of cool things. Like the big twist in this film is that we all expect Adrian, you know, staged his own death, or you can expect, or you suspect it's the brother. So they provide you two options, but you never think it's two people. That's what I like the twist. You go, oh, it's both of them. That's fantastic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we learn that through the dog. So the dog at one point, when she goes back to the house and finds the suit, which is a great revelation, the dog starts barking at somebody, and you go, why is that happening? Yeah. And then we learn it's because it's not just Adrian. The dog was barking at his brother who was wearing the suit. You go, oh my God.
There's two suits,
there's
right?
two suits. Yeah. So I think it's absolutely brilliant to include little like Easter eggs like that, you know, or the dialogue where his brother says, my older brother's always been in control of me my whole life. Right. Well, there you go. That again is showing like he's wearing one of the other suits, but he's also a kind of a shady dude. So he probably enjoyed doing all of those terrible things that he was doing.
There was some benefit he was going to get out of it at some point. However, but
whatever it was, it was crazy. So some great twists, really great cinematography going on there.
I love it.
And then, you know, taking character even deeper with her job when you're developing a character, a day job, people go, oh, they're an accountant and they don't care and they just throw it away. But it's a great way to reflect, what's the theme of the story.
Yeah.
So part of it, like her job is when she's an architect, right? What's an architect's job? Is an architect is to make buildings, right? Is to protect, really, right?
Yeah, to design safe,
right. And that's
stuff, yeah.
and that's what she is, right? And then what is he? His job is optics, right?
Yes, right, right.
So what is that? That's to survey. That's to watch. It's to
watch.
It's to invade space.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So you have both of their occupations are to reinforce the theme of the story of really what we're talking about, which is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think you touched on something earlier, and I don't know if we've come back to it yet, but you mentioned that people not believing women.
Yes.
And so you had said something about or made a comment about some level of is this kind of an examination of hysteria?
Yeah.
Right?
So back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, women that weren't staying at home and weren't little homemakers wanted to start a career, or were frustrated with their husbands, or disappointed, and arguably and rightfully so, in their status in the system, like wanting to vote, things like this, were labeled as being hysterical. Like it was a medical diagnosis,
right?
To the point where they would treat you with sedatives, or worst case scenario, a lobotomy. I mean, it's insane.
An insane asylum, right?
Yeah. So
it freaks me out. It scares me.
But when I think about something like that, and I think about how women weren't listened to, they didn't have a voice, they were marginalized and ignored, and then I look at this character, that's exactly what I see going on.
For sure. Yeah, it's still that examination. It's still, there's still a prevalence to it.
Yeah.
Even though we feel like we have come far beyond and we understand things medically and mentally now that we didn't back then. There's still this sense of, again, it's this ingrained nature for us to, she's just being,
Yeah. Shush it away. She's being dramatic. And
she's being dramatic. Yeah.
There's medical studies on it. So there was read a recent medical study about Black women have a higher percentage of death in the medical system because their symptoms are ignored.
Wow,
which
really?
is crazy. Yeah.
That is crazy.
Their pain isn't managed appropriately. They're not treated appropriately if they're complaining of abdominal pain, and they might die from, and some kind of internal bleeding or anything like that from like a car crash. I mean, it's insane. There's still a lot of progress that needs to be made in our system.
Sure.
To really take women seriously. And especially with this article I read, I mean, Black women medically as well. I mean, so yeah, we still have a long way to go. Thankfully, women are not being hospitalized or lobotomized because they're angry at their band,
Yes.
So it's like,
because they woke up with cramps.
Yeah. Yes. It's insane to think, if you think about it, and it wasn't that long ago. That's the horrible thing.
That's the scary thing. Yeah.
So Steve McLaren says that he feels this movie is the new Rear Window. I actually think that's a really good point.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
I do. I like that a lot. I wonder if that might have been an inspiration at one point for something like this, to have that character no one believes.
It's possible, because even if you think about it and we go back, there's some Hitchcockian kind of aspects to even the way that this was directed, right?
That shower scene though.
Yeah.
That shower scene.
Yeah.
If you can't have me, you can't have me, or this baby. And then she cuts her wrist, and he grabs her, and then she starts prison shanking him. I was like,
I know, it's great.
I was like, I love this movie. It's so good. I love a character like that, man. All right. So The rest of this month, we have a contest, a free giveaway right now. If you go to the Successful Screenwriter Facebook page and click on that giveaway tab, or if you go to the Successful Screenwriter /podcast, you can submit a free entry to our giveaway. We're giving away mentorships, swag. There's all kinds of stuff. And if you listen to this podcast, you can use our secret code for 5 free entries. And what is that secret code?
That secret code tonight is Cybertron. Right? I said it right?
Yeah, you did.
Cybertron.
Nothing to do with the movie we just analyzed, but
no.
it's Cybertron is the secret code for this week. Use that, get 5 free entries. And we've had a lot of people putting on suggestions for films. We're really excited about that.
Thank you for doing that. That's great.
Yeah. The only requirements we have is it has to be streaming and available on streaming. We're not interested in renting a ton of movies. So if it's on streaming, we'll go on there. We'll absolutely do our film analysis. And what are you looking forward to? You think you got anything in mind from any of the ones that have been recommended so far?
There were a couple that we took a look at today, which some of them were a little more modern, and then some of them were 10 15 years ago, and I was like, that's really cool.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share in your social media, where you can tag us at The Successful Screenwriter.